Alright, so I am at a pond. Oh, hello everyone. How did I forget that? I've been saying that forever. Hello everyone. Get two this time. But anyway, I am at a pond. Gonna look to catch them a little bit, but mostly what I want to do is make this a video for Tips Tuesday. Sorry if it's dark in here too. I parked under the shade tree like a smart guy. So, but fishing a jig in ponds and methodically covering water is what I want to talk about. And what I'm gonna fish. That's pretty much all I'm gonna fish. So, that's all I brought. So, I'm gonna show you guys how you can cover water with the jig, what kind of jig is best for like a pond, and kind of the setup I use and all that, but how to cover water and not necessarily fish extremely slow like a lot of people think you gotta with the jig. So a little faster, covering water. Obviously it's not going to be as fast as like just chucking and winding a crankbait or spinnerbait or chatterbait or anything like that, but it can really get you bigger bites. Big fish love jigs. And then also just that methodical, slow, more natural sort of action, you know, can also cause bigger fish to bite as well. So, but big fish love jigs, and you can fish them in ponds. A lot of guys don't think you can really fish them in ponds. A lot of people struggle with the jig. So I'm going to show you from the bank how I like to fish a jig to cover water, as well as being effective and able to catch those fish. So first, before I get out there, the setup, I use 7'6" heavy flipping stick, not a super heavy rod. Medium heavy would be fine for this technique. I use the same rod that I use for every type of jig fishing, flipping or pitching or dragging a football jig or stuff like that. I use the same rod as I do that, so that's just why it's perfectly fine. A stouter hook set, because you really gotta drive that hook home on a jig. 7'6" heavy. I use a high-speed reel still. 8-to-1 is the reel that I like to use. Reel speed doesn't matter too much with this, and I'll show you guys that when we get out there. And then fluorocarbon. I like to go with the lightest fluorocarbon I can, but it's still being stout enough for flipping and pitching and stuff. It's the same, like I said, it's the same rod I use, same setup I use. I love fluorocarbon, the invisibility on a jig, especially like this, with it sitting there a little bit or flipping and pitching close quarters. I'm going to use fluorocarbon, not braid. So, and definitely not mono. So, this right now I got 16-pound fluoro on there. That's typically like my all-around fluorocarbon. Might step up to 20 flipping heavier cover. For this, 16-pound fluoro is perfectly good. That's like money. So that's why I use 7'6" heavy, 8-to-1 casting reel, and 16-pound fluorocarbon. And then this is just a half-ounce jig. I use half-ounce jigs a lot. I'm not going to tell you which brand. I might actually do that tomorrow. Talk about which brands of jigs I use. For every jig, I pretty much use one brand now, and they're kind of unknown, so I'll probably tell you guys about it, because their stuff's awesome. They're my favorite jigs now, of any type. So, anyway, enough of me yapping. Let's get out there, and I'll talk while I'm out there and show you guys the retrieve that I do and all that stuff. So. decent one, long. One. Alright, buddy. Let's get you back in here. Pissed off. This will be covering water with the jig in ponds, like from the bank. Like, and not necessarily a football jig, because I don't really care for football jigs in ponds, just because of all the weeds and scums, and you can see, well, maybe you can't see all that, but this one especially with all these sticks, football jig really will just get hooked into that stuff really good, or pick up so many weeds and slime, and so I'm not a fan throwing them in ponds. Instead, I'll just use a flipping jig, and just kind of work it the same. I drag it a little bit. As soon as you hit something, like you hit one of these sticks or a rock or something hard, then just kind of pop it up off of there. But don't like want to get it completely off of there or get yourself unsnagged, whatever, so to speak. Like, don't freak out that you're gonna get snagged. But you just kind of pop it off of it, let it, it's really, you gotta really slow down with it. But you don't have to go, you know, like deathly slow either. You're just looking for things to bump that jig into and then pop it off. Always seems like you get a bite when you do that. So. And the awesome thing about a jig bite is, you know when you get a bite. So I'm like hitting some sticks right now, so I just kind of pop it off of there. Kind of feel it bumping into those sticks. And then just let it fall back down. Maybe sit there. Like I said, don't be afraid that you're gonna get hooked, like snagged up, and you gotta get it out of there. Don't be afraid of it. Especially if you got a jig with a good weed guard on it. So it's kind of like a hybrid technique that I like to use, where I swim it a little bit, you know, really slowly on the bottom, almost like dragging it, you know. Reel it down there. And then if I start to feel something, stop. See what it is first. And then maybe just give it a couple little pops or a pop, you know. And you can also kind of drag it too, you know. Just think of it as a hybrid of all the jigs you use, you know. That's how you can cover water, get some bites, slow down a little bit, but still cover water and not just be bored just sitting there letting a bait soak, you know. So when I'm fishing ponds, bank fishing, I'm just trying to cover water. Because in ponds, bass don't really sit a lot. They'll kind of take cover and sit for a little bit maybe. But I think they just cruise and feed a lot. So I'm just trying to cover water, get it in front of their face, get bites. Alright, so there you have it. Just caught the one, but that wasn't really the whole point of being there for the day. The whole point was just to talk about the jig fishing and how to use a jig in a pond, kind of cover water. Really the best way to do it, and find some fish with that jig. So I pretty much mentioned everything out on the water. Slow reel, you hit something, pop it off that. Don't be afraid to get it hung up. If it's a good jig with a good weed guard, you probably will just bounce off of things. Rocks might be a totally different story, but usually ponds don't really have rocks. They're just weed bottoms and things like that. So that's how to just kind of get them through the weeds, pop them through the weeds, drag them in and up and in the weeds, and just cover water effectively and find those fish, and not have to slow way down, but still, slow down for, instead of just cranking something, slow down if the bite's a little tough and use that jig, because they work. I'm telling you, and this technique works, and you can catch the biggest fish on a jig. So anyway, I'm not going to go through brands. I'll actually do that tomorrow, so if you're curious about what jigs I use, I'm going to show you all of them, types, and a brand that I really like that people don't really know too much about, and that I am obsessed with now, and colors and sizes and all that. So I'll see you guys tomorrow.